So, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I am Terry Kaye, and this is my colleague Vicki Weber. And we are here together for about 30 minutes or so to talk about experimenting with flipped learning in the online learning center. I first want to apologize for starting late. We're about 5 minutes overdue. As we were logging in, Vicky's computer chose to crash. So we are adapting and we're being flexible, and Vicky and I will switch out. We are going to be both presenting in our time together. So let me give you a quick overview of what we're going to be doing today. For the first couple of minutes, Vicky is going to give you a bit of background into flipped learning. I will then take over and show you a lesson plan we've constructed for you and take you inside the online learning center and do a quick demo of how that'll work. And then we'll wrap up with Vicky's final thoughts on actually putting flipped learning into practice. At any time, do feel free to post your questions into the chat bar, into the question bar, and we will take note of them. If you could address it to the organizer, that'll be me. I will watch out for them and we'll respond to them during the course of our half hour together. And at the end, we'll leave about 5 minutes or so for additional questions. So as we kick off, I especially want to acknowledge, I know it's a very busy time for you all, and I thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Terry, and hi, everybody. So today we're going to talk about flipped learning, but I wanted to back up just a little bit because we want to also put this in context. And so we're going to start with a little summary for those of you who may have missed ARJE's great webinar series on blended learning earlier this year. I thought I would start out with a little explanation and summary about blended learning and flipped learning. So basically, blended learning is really any kind of learning that combines in-person and an online experience. And typically, the in-person experience is together in a group, and the online experience is often individual. But in any event, it combines direct instruction with digital technology and allows for a lot of hands-on collaboration to take place. Flipped learning is simply a subset of blended learning. And in the flipped learning model, typically new material is introduced before your students come to class. And lately, we've often seen a lot of these done with videos that the students can watch ahead of time at home. This differs from the traditional model because typically in a traditional classroom model, the teacher will present new material to students together in a class, and they'll work on it for a while. And then later, the students would go off on their own to do any sort of practice and analysis on their own. So the flipping part is that the students encounter the new material on their own beforehand, and then they use the time together and with the teacher to do more processing of the material and analyzing and working in collaborative ways. It looks like this. So here we have our student. He's in his own environment. He's taking the time that he wants. If he wants to watch a video or explore the material over and over again, he has the opportunity to do that. And then when he comes together with the rest of the class, they have the opportunity to interact with the teacher, to ask questions, to do research, to work on projects. It kind of adds a constructivist dimension to our learning opportunities with students. The goals of flipped learning are typically to try and engage our students more actively in the learning process. And this comes by reducing some of the frontal teaching. And it also, because the new material, or at least some of the new material introduction, takes place outside of class, it allows you to use an expanded amount of class time for reflection, for working on projects, for those kinds of constructivist activities. And it also allows you to reach out to, in another way, to all types of learners. Some of the advantages of flipping your classroom. The key thing, and here it is in the center, it makes learning central rather than the teaching. And in this way, it fosters more independent thinking. It helps you provide increased individualized attention. And this is maybe counterintuitive, but when you are able to operate with students who are organized in their classroom and you are, as they say, the guide on the side as compared to the sage on the stage, you can really spend time with each student or with each group of students on the things that they're the most interested in and concerned about. It also promotes a lot more peer interaction and collaborative skills among students because they are actively engaging together. And in this way, we think it encourages a higher amount of student engagement. So I think one of the reasons we're here together today is to talk about how you can actually experience and experiment with flipped learning in your setting. And what I want to convey to you is that this is a step that you can take in little pieces. You can flip as little as one class period setting and try something as an experiment. And so what we want to do is help you figure out how to do that. One of the prerequisites for flipping a classroom is that you're going to need an additional space. In addition to your physical classroom, you are going to need a place for students to go to get to this new material that they're going to interact with on their own. Ideally, this would be some centralized online setting where you can add and organize a variety of content, and the students can log in from their home at a time of their choosing during the week in order to interact with it and find it. You're going to want this centralized online space to be very safe and to be private. There are federal regulations that govern putting kids in online educational or online spaces of any kind, educational or otherwise. And so you're going to want to check to make sure that whatever kind of online setting you're contemplating does comply with that if you are dealing with students 13 and under. Again, there are federal regulations about this. So for example, some sites that are operated by nonprofit organizations who are getting funded may ask to collect email addresses and names from you for students who are involved in an online experience. That's not something that you might feel comfortable with. So you're going to want, again, to check for these kinds of compliance issues for safety and privacy for your students. The other thing that you're going to want to make sure that you have is, again, a space that your students can get to easily, and they don't have to wander around to find things. They don't have to wander around the internet looking for links, and they don't even have to wander around too much on the site itself. They should be able to get easily with one or two clicks to where they need to go and to find the materials that you have put together for them in the order you want them to see it. And it's useful. We call this an asynchronous experience. Asynchronous simply means in your own time. You as the teacher can go in on your own time to organize and post the material for the students to see, and conversely, the students can come whenever it is convenient for them to do it. This is compared to what is known as a synchronous experience, which is basically what we're having today. We are all together online at the same time, and you can see that sometimes the technology bites us a little bit. For example, when my computer crashes just as we're supposed to be getting on together. So that's one of the technological glitches you have with a synchronous or at the same time experience. But flipped learning allows you to use the asynchronous or in your own time platform in order to get your students involved. And it's a little bit more stable because not everybody is trying to do it all at the same time. And in fact, our platform, the Online Learning Center, was designed with this as one of the uses in mind. We currently have about 400 schools using the Online Learning Center, and interestingly, most of them are using it for access to our blended learning materials, specifically in Hebrew. One of the things, we actually think it's quite a perfect place to try a flipped learning experience, and we're delighted that some people may contemplate experimenting with it for that purpose. It allows students access from home when they want to. It allows you to organize the materials that you select, and there's no hunting around. Now, there's no cost for using it for this way. It's free to create your own school on the online learning center. It's free to invite your students and teachers into the OLC. There's no cost to add or post your own materials or use videos or do any of the things that you might want to do or use it as a blogging center. We do charge for specific materials like our blended Hebrew, but that is not what we're talking about here today. We're talking about a resource for the community that is free that would allow you, again, to experiment as you like. The only real potential cost for experimenting with flipped learning using this model is really your time. And I just need to click to see if we have any questions. I think we're doing well. And I'm going to turn this over back to Terry because we'd like to show you a very specific example with an actual lesson that we created as a demonstration for you so that you can get an even clearer idea about the best way to do this kind of experiment in your school. So I'm going to turn this back to Terry.
Just going to review. I see a couple of questions have come in. Somebody asking, have you begun? That's a good question. Do you have examples of these kind of platform for flipped learning? Yes, that is what I'm going to demonstrate to you right now. Okay, and do feel free to continue to send in your questions. So what we have prepared for you is a lesson plan. I am going to email this lesson plan to you all after the session is over. I, of course, have all your emails, and I'll send it to you in the next couple of days. So we constructed this plan specifically for the webinar, and I'd like you, if you wouldn't mind, taking a look at the screen. What you can see we have done is we have drawn a video from the Israel 21C website. It's a free video, of course, and we are using this video as a kickoff to teach our students the value of dan lechaf zchut, giving the benefit of the doubt or judging favorably. In the next few seconds, I'm going to take you into the online learning center and show you how I've posted the video and what I'm asking of the students. Before I do that, would you mind taking a quick look at the goals? At the bottom of the screen, you'll see 4 bullet points. Okay, so let's move into the online learning center and exit our PowerPoint. What you see here is a typical dashboard or home page in the online learning center. You can see that I'm logged in here as a teacher. Here's the tab that says teacher. The online learning center provides access for 3 kinds of roles: the education director, the teacher, and the student. I'm logged in my teacher role. You can see that I'm a member of Temple Shalom in Springfield with some information about my school. And in the middle here, my education director has posted some school-wide news under this purple bar for everyone in the OLC to see. Here in blue are the classes that I teach. The class that I want to take you into today is called Israel Experience 6th grade, and this is my flipped learning class. So let's enter it. So I clicked on the blue bar, and I'm now inside this Israel class, and here you can see it designated on the yellow bar above. You can see I have only one post here with this blue, here it is in blue, and it's called Holy Capoeira. I put this post into my class by clicking on the green Add New Post button, and I entered all the information I want my students, all the materials I want my students to act upon in their work that they're going to be doing at home in advance of our session. So let us enter with this post, which is what the students will do. They see exactly the same thing. I clicked on the title of the post, and now I see I'm inside the post, And what I, as the student, see is everything contained in one place, in one vessel, so to speak. The teacher, that's me, has uploaded a video that I want the students to watch, and I've also given them an assignment. You'll see it listed on the side here. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to play the video very briefly so you can get a sense of what it is, and then we're going to take a look at the questions I ask the kids to start to make their own meaning and to prepare for our in-person session. And then we'll look at some of the children's reactions. So I think you can get a sense of what the video is about. I'm turning the sound down, but you please do continue to watch it. So take a look at the questions I've asked of my students. Find and list all the Jewish ritual objects, etc. Why do you think people in the streets are staring at the men doing capoeira? And then I've asked him to think about how appearances can be misleading. And this is going to be the lead into a discussion we're going to have in class when we all get together. You'll also see that I have posted into this discussion thread several PDFs, attachments. I'll talk about those in a moment. As the video continues, please don't hesitate to add your questions. Okay, let's stop the video now and take a look at some of the comments that the students have posted. So the newest comments are posted near the top. Let's start at the bottom. This young lady Julia said she noticed these items in the video. She responded to the question about why people are staring. That's question number 2 in this way. And then she asked a question of me. That was rather unexpected. Or she asked a question actually of the class and said, I noticed there are no women or girls doing capoeira. Why is that? Now, students have responded above as well, but I wanted to show you that you as the teacher have the chance to reply to a comment by a student. So here I said, hey, Julia, for sure we'll discuss that in class, etc. The student, Hannah Laley, added some additional thoughts. And I, again, as the teacher, commented on that. And finally, we have our third student, Jaron, who went ahead and was kind of intrigued by this whole notion of capoeira and found and posted his own YouTube link. And here it is. And I've said, hey, good job, Jaron. I'll show this video in class. So what you may notice here is that this is leading, the students are beginning to construct their own meaning, and they're actually coming up with some surprising answers. You can see how they're beginning to interact online. Here I'd just like to address for a brief moment the issue of one of the challenges you might face, and that is getting the children to actually do the work in advance. And I don't think that's going to be a surprise to you to hear me say that. Here are some tips. As the teacher, you will need to set firm expectations, carve it in stone that you expect the children to do this work in advance and to come to class prepared. Make sure the parents are aware of that. Acknowledge the children who've done it. You can see by their comments, who've already done their advanced work. Call them out in class. They love to be acknowledged, as you well know. You can provide email reminders as well. So good. So now we come to class, and now we're ready for our in-person encounter. And the first thing you might do is to show the video again in class. First of all, as a reminder, and second of all, to be sure that all students, even those who didn't participate, are able to do so. Then hold the discussion, and you can base it on, you can sort of start afresh, or you can actually open up your OLC class and show these posts, these comments on a smartboard or whatever, and the children can discuss this in small groups or as a whole class. I always recommend giving prime time to those children who did do the work in advance. They may even lead the discussion themselves. In concluding this description of how a class might go, let me tell you that in the lesson plan there are several examples of extending the activities. I'll give you one example right now. Remember, I said to you earlier, I've posted some attachments. I have the choice of having children asking my students to print out these attachments and to complete it in advance or bring it in, or I can set up small groups with the children interacting and using these visual organizers. Let me give you one example of what a visual organizer might look like. So this is a page drawn from Living Jewish Values, Volume 3, and it addresses this exact mitzvah of Dan Chafzchut. And it's an example of a visual organizer. We will send you several others as well. What they do here is that the children assess how objective they themselves are in assessing others and in judging others. I'm going to pause here and hand the controls back to Vicki, who is going to wrap up with some thoughts about putting flipped learning into practice.
Thank you, Terry. We're having lots of fun here with musical chairs. So basically, we have just about 3 more slides to get through to wrap up our session today. So a flipped class, from your point of view, is a very active class. It allows you to use your in-person time with students so that they have the opportunity to process and to create things and to basically construct their learning. It does require somewhat more advanced planning on your part. You're going to need to organize pre-class material in the way that you want it and post it where your students can have access from wherever they are. And as Terry pointed out, you are going to need to encourage them to go and interact with this material by sending reminders, by emphasizing its importance, and by encouraging it through all of your expectations when you are with them. You're also going to want to organize perhaps somewhat different in-class options for your students. And finally, you're going to want to create some backups for students who did not have an opportunity to take a look at the material before they come to class. And you're going to want to think through how you want them to be able to participate once they get into your class. When you're organizing for the actual class time in a flipped classroom model, you're going to want to think through the format and the scaffolding of your in-person time together. Do you want them to work on a project? Do you want them to do it all together? Do you want them to be broken up into small groups and do things independently? And do they have all of the materials they need in order to be able to do that? It would be delightful if you were to give them options, and this kind of structure really allows for that. There may be some students who want to do a skit together based on this, and other students who might want to do a research project, and still more who might like to do some other kinds of small group work and activities. And so this gives you the opportunity to provide those different options. You're going to want to think through, obviously, organizing your students into effective working groups, and that's where your classroom management skills come into play. Importantly, you'll notice, with a 2-minute video, there's a limit to the amount of content you can really provide for students. And so in order to go further into depth, you're going to want to provide classroom reference materials. This might be a book for every student that they can look at, that you can organize activities around. It might be some classroom materials that they have access to if you want them to do some kind of research or other projects. So the reference materials in class will be very important, and your availability to be able to direct students to the appropriate kinds of reference materials will be part of your being the guiding force in the learning that they're constructing for themselves. As Terry pointed out, student organizers are a great way to help foster independence with your students in this small group activity. They're going to want to have some directions from you that they can focus on and have in their hands, and a place to organize the work that they're doing together. So for example, if some of them are leading some or doing some small group discussion questions together, you'll want a space for them to collect their thoughts so that when you come together, back together as a big group, some of your students can present to others. This will give them the notes on which to do it. So student organizers will be a key thing in this flipped model. And you'll want a place to document work. So if students do a skit, maybe they'd like to videotape it, you can put it back into your online space so that all the students can see it and so they can even share it with their parents from home. Overall, the idea is that you'll be preparing to coach their learning rather than teaching the material. Now, I do have a question asking if we will be mailing us the PowerPoint, and of course, we would be delighted to do that. And just to see if we have some other questions here. There's a question, which grades are best for flipped learning? Can it be used in lower as well as higher grades? I would say if you have the appropriate online space, and again, there are federal regulations that govern having students 13 and under involved in an online environment. I think enthusiastically, really many ages can be involved. I am constantly amazed when I visit classrooms at how sophisticated the conversations of second and third graders are about things that we might not expect. So I think this kind of model allows them to really demonstrate that. So I wouldn't be afraid to try it with many different grades. You know, perhaps not kindergarten and first grade, but certainly by the time they're in third grade, they have the independence and the thought structure to be able to take in a video, think about some questions, and participate in class. I'm seeing, yes, we have recorded this and we will be providing it for people to take a look. And we've also gotten many, many requests from people who weren't able to be part of our synchronous experience so that they can take part in the webinar in an asynchronous way. And I think that's all of the questions I see here. If I missed any questions, we did have a question, can you expand on what student organizers are? And I'd be delighted to, you'll get some with the sample lesson that we're sending. But again, a student organizer is really anything that can be used as a tool independently by your students in order to work in small groups or independently together. It can be giving them the instructions. It can be for gathering their thoughts and their work together, answering questions, keeping track of what their colleagues say, and also for reporting small group work back into a larger group. So I'm going to turn this back over to Terry just to say goodbye. I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm hoping that this was a helpful thing. We would love to do more webinars like this in the future. And I'm going to let Terry sign off for us. Thank you so much.
I'm going to take a quick look and see if there are any questions. We are over our 30 minutes, so if you've left, I understand. Okay, we have a question. How do you get parents on board? Okay, how do you get parents on board to do homework with their children to prepare for this type of class? That's always a huge challenge, and we mostly recommend that you keep the parents out of it. We see as well with educators using our Hebrew software that it's best when it's the child, him or herself, who drives the at-home work. But having said that, this is a great way to get parents involved if it's something that intrigues them and speaks to sort of their level. And I'm going to say that I think a video like we just posted that is sort of provokes interesting challenges for parents as well is a good way to get them to contribute. How long do you give students to see the video? Well, that's the beauty of doing it at home. The kids can take as much time or as little time as they want. They can watch it several times, and they get to decide. The power is in their hands. Somebody's asking, how do you document the work? Well, students document their work in many ways. It could be creating a PowerPoint, could be creating a video, doing a Word document, a drawing, a chart, a poster, a talk. They can absolutely. One of the ways you can assess their knowledge is what they say in their comments in the online learning center. That's a way of documenting their work. Janice is asking, I'm not clear on you've said about that, student organizers. If we use the Behrman House OLC, are the federal requirements taken care of for us? We provide you as the education director with a permission form that you can have your parents sign. However, that lies in your hands to determine whether you want your parents to sign that form or you just want to put a checkbox on your online registration form. Okay, Vicki wants the roles.
And I just wanted to jump in and say that the Online Learning Center complies with federal regulations under the Childhood Online Privacy Protection Act. And we are also designated, we've gotten the SAFE seal, which is an independent group that looks at websites of all kinds that children use to make sure that it does provide the level of safety and privacy that we want our students to have. The permissioning system that Terry is speaking about is part of maintaining that compliance. And so when you download a permission form and have your parents sign it, you are also complying with the federal regulations, and then you just hang on to those.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that I'm covering all the questions. Can we see the recording of the session again? Yes, just email us and we will send it to you. Stephanie's asking, hey Stephanie, do you have any suggestions for getting buy-in from the parents to support this? I have many parents who don't want their children doing homework online because the child's screen time is limited. That sort of addressed that a little bit, but yeah, that is an issue. Yeah, and the Vicky's right. So you can decide how much or how little time you want the kids to spend. You can say, hey, spend 5 minutes watching this video, and then spend another 5 minutes thinking about it. Or, hey, parents, we just need your kids for up to 15 minutes a week. See if that helps by putting a sort of a time limit on it. Does the Behrman House Online Learning Center have materials for the immersion day school? By immersion, Orly, do you mean Hebrew immersion? I'm going to assume that is, unless you can type into the chat bar and tell me. We have available materials for prayer learning and alphabet, decoding. We don't have Hebrew immersion in the online learning center. All right, got it. Thanks. I think we have covered it all. Somebody said slick use of async and sync there. Yeah, you got to do what you got to do. Okay, fantastic. So I think we've covered it all. You know how to reach. Oh, you've said which grades. Will you have future sessions? Let us know what you want, and we'll do it. We'll absolutely do it. So I'm going to sign off now. I want to thank you all for being here and for giving up your valuable time. And we will send you the lesson plan in the next couple of days. And let us know if you want the PowerPoint, because we'll send it to you upon request. With that, I'm going to say goodbye from both of us. See you soon. All the best. Have a wonderful summer. Bye.